Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Russ Riesinger.
And I'm Jeanelle Slade. Montana lawmakers ready to roll the dice and up the ante on sports gambling across the state.
With the Super Bowl just days away, viewers will be looking for the chance to win big. And these days, you no longer have to travel to Sin City to make those dreams come true.
Q2's Casey Conlin is taking a closer look at what this could mean. Tonight, he shows us how sports betting has found its place in the U.S. and when it might be heading to Montana.
Russ and Jeanelle, Sunday is the biggest day of the year for advertisers, grocery stores, and sports gamblers. Last year, $158 million was wagered in Nevada on the Super Bowl, an all-time record. But that number will be dwarfed this year because of a Supreme Court ruling last May that has brought betting into the mainstream more than ever before. Sports gambling has a complicated history in the United States. You can trace origins back to horse racing during the Civil War and the rise of boxing in the early 1900s. But the industry was largely underground, frowned upon in public thanks to numerous scandals, none more famous than 8 members of the Chicago White Sox throwing the World Series 100 years ago this October. Nevada was the first state to legalize sports betting in 1949, but the federal government imposed a 10% tax on winnings, which many early operators couldn't cover, so the industry was basically dead on arrival. Then, in 1974, that tax was reduced to 2%, and the Las Vegas sportsbook you know today was born.
3 key elements to having a sportsbook. You wanted to enhance the overall resort, the property experience. You wanted to attract new customers and make some money.
Vinny Magliulo is a Vegas heavyweight, going back to his days in charge of the Caesar Palace Sportsbook in the 80s and 90s. He was there when Congress passed the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act in 1992, barring states from offering any new forms of sports wagering. Just 4 of them offered some type at the time: Nevada, Oregon, Delaware, and Montana. That's why you see squares pools in bars and the famous pig races just outside Red Lodge. Montana had the chance to legalize full-scale wagering, so why didn't they? Because of the state's largest sports governing body, according to one of its most famous sons.
Montana was grandfathered in. They could have done it, but the NCAA basically put a gun to their head and said you won't have any more championship events in Missoula or Bozeman if you go ahead and legalize it. And of course, the legislature wilted.
In his 50 years as a sportscaster, Brent Musburger has always acknowledged that gambling plays a large role in sports, so much so that he now is the managing editor at the Vegas Stats and Information Network, a gambling-centric sports talk show based in the South Point Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, a show that has become much more popular across the country in the last 8 months for one reason.
In a 6-3 vote yesterday, the justices struck down a decades-old federal law.
On May 14th of last year, the Supreme Court voted to overturn the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, making it legal for all 50 states to approve new betting legislation. So far, 7 have. New Jersey was first, taking bets starting midway through June, and in just 6.5 months, saw $1.25 billion wagered in 2018. Some believe the more states that allow it, the worse it will be for Nevada, who has held a monopoly for so long. But that hasn't been the case so far. The 2 highest grossing months in Silver State history were this past November and September.
I think what it shows overall is that our industry, our niche industry or cottage industry at one time is now becoming more mainstream. And I think what it's doing is creating more customers overall. So I think it's a good thing.
That's what Montana tavern and casino owners are hoping for. Kirk Dealer runs the Enterprise, the only casino in Billings that offers pari-mutuel wagering at horse racing tracks around the country.
It's been a really good thing to get people in the door. Just having that little niche that brings people in the door and keeps them around. And I've known a lot of people that have actually called here and like, do you guys have sports betting?
The short answer is no. The longer answer is not yet, but maybe soon. 3 different organizations are writing legislation right now, with a draft possibly finished as early as tomorrow. Join us after the Super Bowl on Sunday, where we dive into the timeline and what sports gambling in Montana might look like. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks so much, Casey.
Today, Republicans on a Montana House committee killed a bill that creates funds to help low-income Montanans with civil legal disputes.
The House Judiciary Committee voted 10-9 today to table House Bill 182. The bill would raise court filing fees to finance a state legal aid fund. Now, that money would be about $900,000 a year and would go to nonprofit organizations that provide legal aid to people who cannot afford attorneys in civil cases, such as landlord-tenant disputes or family law.
Judges, lawyers, and business people testified for the measure last week, saying it would help unclog a court system overrun with cases filed by people without attorneys. But Republicans on the committee said they didn't like the higher fees that pay for that program.
Now, all 10 votes to kill the measure came from Republicans. All of the panel's Democrats, along with Republican Terry Moore of Billings, voted for it.
Supporters said they don't know if they'll try to revive that measure.
In other news, a man discovered passed out with blood covering his body and a gun at his side sent Billings police into action this morning.
Q2's Samantha Sullivan following that story, which unfolded downtown in the area of the Yellowstone Courthouse. She joins us now with the latest. Samantha?
Well, Russ and Jeanelle, police say it started with a report of a break-in at a downtown beauty supply store around 7:30 this morning. At the same time, another call came in of a report of a transient male refusing to leave a downtown building. When police arrived, they found the 32-year-old man passed out with a gun next to him. Things escalated between the man and officers, and he was taken into custody and later transported to the hospital. After further investigation, it was determined the gun was a pellet gun. Police also determined the blood came from cuts the man received while breaking into that beauty store. Police say the man has been charged with assault with a weapon and burglary. Russ and Jeanelle.
All right, thanks so much, Samantha. A suspect is behind bars after leading officers on a chase through Billings. It began shortly after 11 o'clock last night when authorities received a report of a pedestrian being struck and then a female being forced into a vehicle. Officers attempted to stop that vehicle, but the driver fled, leading authorities on a short chase before crashing at South 27th and South Frontage Road. The driver was taken into custody. Now, Billings police have not yet released details on the female's condition, damages from the crash, the suspect's name, or possible charges.
A former Custer County High School science teacher is sentenced to 10 years in prison for 6 counts of sexual intercourse without consent. 38-year-old Morgan Pett pleaded guilty in December to multiple sexual encounters with a 15-year-old female student over a month's time back in December of 2016. Prosecutors said Pett attempted to conceal evidence. He'll pay $25,000 in fines related to the charges. He will also get credit for the 247 days he's already served in jail. Pett will have to register as a level 1 sexual offender and undergo psychosexual evaluation. The female victim told police that the two began a relationship in the fall of 2016 and began texting each other daily. Pett started as a teacher in Miles City in 2008.
Fire and smoke caused more than $100,000 damage to a home on the Billings West End. Fire crews responded to the home on St. John's Avenue around 10:30 this morning. No one was in the home at the time. Thankfully, firefighters say the flames started due to an electrical failure with a toaster. The blaze caused heavy smoke damage to the main floor of the house and heavy fire damage to the kitchen. Investigators report an estimated $120,000 in total damage.
Butte police releasing some details about a 9-hour standoff and hostage situation aboard a bus bound for Billings last night.
MTN's John Amy tells us how police were able to end the tense standoff with an armed man who claimed he had a bomb.
A 52-year-old man from Spokane, Washington, remains in custody in Butte after a 9-hour-long standoff with police Wednesday, where he's accused of hijacking a bus about 12:30 in the afternoon. The suspect, armed with a handgun, held a 45-year-old Butte man hostage on the bus for about 3 hours before the hostage managed to escape the gunman. It made for a tense standoff.
Anytime you have a guy who's got a hostage, a firearm, he says he has explosives, that's a bad situation.
This was an extremely challenging situation for police because the suspect's actions and demands were extremely irrational.
He had a number of grievances with the society as a rule. He wanted to speak to Ryan Zinke at one time. He wanted to speak to the governor at one time. They felt that he was probably suffering some paranoia or some mental health issues.
Police credit the fast actions of the bus driver, who after escaping from the bus, went around to the rear and disabled the engine so that the suspect could not drive away.
he did a great job with disabling the bus and then helping us throughout the incident. So he's certainly one of the heroes of this whole thing.
By the time the standoff reached its 9th hour, police found an opportunity to try to end it, so they shot tear gas into the bus.
He left the gun in the bus, and then, of course, the OC-10 and the tear gas started taking effect on him and pushed him right out the front of the bus where he was given verbal commands to take off his clothes so we could determine whether he had anything wired to him or not.
Investigators found no evidence of a bomb and no injuries were reported in the incident. In Butte, John Amy, MTN News.
Now, police say they will release the suspect's name once charges are brought against him. Those charges expected tomorrow.
And tonight at 10, we're going to hear from the hostage in that very scary situation.
Coming up on tonight's 5:30 News, the governor takes to the House chambers to address the state. Find out what you can expect.
And a little later in sports, Scott shows us why the Yellow Jacket men are set on blistering Central Washington tonight.
And coming up in weather, next couple of days look pretty good, but we are getting ready for a major weather pattern change, one that has measurable snow and very cold temps. We'll tell you all about it coming up.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.